All right, so we've got a very crowded waiting room. So I want to let people in. Otherwise, they're going to be very smushed in there, and that's not pleasant. So I want them all. I have this like image of everybody's like just smushed in there. So we're going to keep letting people in. We've got a ton of people coming in today. This is so exciting, Hannah. Oh, people just want to hear all about this, and I'm sure they also want to share their ideas as well. I left a little love note in the waiting room while they were waiting. I'm not sure how many people were noticing the chat at that point, letting them know that you are looking forward to interacting with them and that you are not here to lecture them. Um, so look at that, more people coming, more people. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who have not joined us before, why not? I don't understand, but this may be your first time here. That's okay. We love all of our friends, our old friends, our new friends, all of our friends. Let me just quickly share a couple of brief messages because you're not here to see me. I know that. I don't take it personally. It's okay. We are here at the USDLA Friday webinar series. We're here almost every Friday. And so if this is your first time, welcome. If this is not your first time, welcome back. So today, I first want to remind you that if you missed the last episode of our amazing webinar series, we had our friends from CILC here. If you missed it, that's okay because it was recorded and you can head over to our YouTube channel. Did you know we have a YouTube channel? Now you do. Go to USDLA.tv and you can see the webinar from CILC and a lot of other great content. So that's a new place, a relatively new place for some of you. You may not realize that that's there. But as I said, in just a moment, I am going to turn things over to Hannah because she is the star of the hour. She's why you're here. But I have to keep the lights on, so I have to do all the other announcements real quick. Also, if you have not registered for the conference, it's coming up in June very quickly. We'll be in St. Louis, but we'll also be virtual. Some people did not realize that. I got a couple of messages this past week. Hannah, for instance, she'll be joining us again at the conference. I'm very excited. Different topic. So we get multiple chances to visit with Hannah. But if you have not registered for the conference, because I love you all so much and because I'm grateful that you made it to the session today, I have a nice little discount code there at the bottom. You can get 10% off of any of your registrations using that code, USDLA 24, 100% off, 10% off. Sorry, I wish it was 100% off. That'd be awesome, right? But again, unfortunately, I got to pay for things. So if you can join us, if you have questions, just let me know. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it. Among the speakers that we will have, the entire program is on the website right now, but some of our keynote speakers and featured speakers will have Don Mann as one of our keynotes. Very inspiring about overcoming obstacles and challenges and things. We're also going to have Joe Salustio he'll be local from Lindenwood University. Some of you might remember last year we had his book Commencement. We had his co-author at the conference, Kate Colbert. This year we'll have Joe there to do kind of a follow-up like a year later. The book's been out for a little over a year now, like lessons learned and updates and all that kind of stuff. And then the ever popular, she needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. The amazing Dr. Robbie Melton will be there. She'll be talking about all the tech stuff and AI and all the AI, because right, that's what everybody wants to talk about. But she talks about all the tech stuff as well. So come and join us and check it all out. Also, while you're there, you'd get a chance to meet our award winners from this year. I think they just finished going through all the submissions and everything. I can't wait to see who won each year. I meet some amazing people who've been working on some amazing projects. Finally, before I shut up and get out of here, have to mention all of our sponsors who do make this possible through their generous support. On the screen, we have our gold and silver sponsors. If you see somebody you work with, please reach out and say hello to them. They get very lonely when you don't do that. But also, if you see someone whose name you don't recognize, you may want to check it out, see what they do, because our sponsors come from a full range of hardware, software, services, all types of things. And so you might just meet somebody new that's doing something interesting that would be really relevant and necessary in your space. And then finally, here are our bronze sponsors and our friends and exhibitors. We don't want to leave them out. Again, take a look at the list. I've met some amazing people in the past couple of years that I had from places I had never heard. So I always just encourage people, if you don't recognize a name, go and take a peek and see what they do. Many of them will also be at the conference or be doing webinars with us. So stay tuned for more about that. So with that introduction, I want to turn things over now to Hannah Howell, who, as I said, I know she's the reason you're here today. I just want to thank you again, Hannah, for being with us. And look at this amazing audience you have. You even have people on camera. I love it. I love it. So thank you for being here. And the floor is entirely yours.
Awesome. All right, let me get my screen shared here. All right, so can I get like a thumbs up if you can see it? Great. Okay, so first of all, my name is Hannah Howell, and I am a assistant professor at the University of North Alabama in the College of Education and Human Sciences in the Department of Teaching, Learning, and Leadership, which is maybe one of the longest job titles I have ever had. Prior to that, I was the assistant director of instructional technology support at the University of Alabama, which is also a really long title to say that I was over the support for all of our online courses that were offered at the University of Alabama. Nothing I'm going to tell you today is are things that you haven't heard before. I really want to just encourage you as instructional designers and as professors that this really will benefit your students. And I will reference some of the mentors that I've had in my life. And I'm about to put somebody on the spot because I saw her hop in and she's going to kill me. And I did not know she was going to be here today. But Catherine Close is here. And she was an instructional designer at the University of Alabama for many years as I was growing in my instructional design and my academic career. And I actually reference her later on um, in this presentation. So I'm really glad that she's here and she gets to hear that live. But without further ado, let's get started. So like I told Valerie before we get started, I really want this to be more of a dialogue. I am not here to just talk to you and tell you how I do things and tell you how I do things are the best way to do things. I realize that my scope is very limited. I've always been a professor or an instructor in a college of education. And so if you are from a different discipline and you find out that something else works for your students, please feel free to put that in the chat or just interrupt me. We can turn this into a conversation about instructor presence, and I would love to hear some feedback from what works for you all. So let's get started. All right, so on today's agenda, we're going to give you a little bit of instruction. We're going to really deep dive into the difference between instructor presence and teaching presence because they are different, and the research tells us that. We're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of increasing this presence for your students. I am going to give you some examples of how I do it in my current courses, and then I will open it up to questions. So if anyone has any ideas or you have questions for me, we will definitely have some time at the end to do that. So first, why is this important? Online learning is not new. It has been around for some time in many different ways. I worked at the University of Alabama in online learning when they were still recording classes and sending DVDs and VHS tapes to people. So this is not new. What I think we are seeing is that when everyone was forced to go into the online space and the virtual space during the pandemic, the kind of stigma around online learning and virtual learning started to be removed because we were forced to do it. And we very quickly realized that this could be beneficial. But what I think we are seeing is a lack of training and a lack of knowledge in how to translate those face-to-face relationships and communication ways into the online space. Because just because you can teach something online doesn't mean that that activity directly translates into the online space. So you can achieve the same learning objective in the online space, but it might have to be done very differently. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So first, we're going to talk about instructor presence and teaching presence. So when you think of instructor presence, I really want you to think as the instructor. So the course has been designed, and it is what happens when the course goes live. So this is going to be every interaction that the instructor has with their students. It's going to be the position they establish with the different things that they tell the students are going to do. So those expectations that you have for your students, I think as instructors, we are really good at putting or having expectations for our students, but sometimes we fail to allow them to hold us to expectations. So for example, my students know that I will respond to an email within 24 hours. And this is where Catherine comes in. She told me during the first class that I ever taught that students experience time like it is dog years. And so they are working um, at whatever time works for them. And if I'm only checking email twice a day, it may be three. Or if I'm only checking email once every 2 days, so the every 48 hours rule, they may be working at night. And if I don't do that for 48 hours, they're having to wait 2.5 or 3 days to get their question answered. And so her position and the way she used to train some of our teachers was check your email twice a day. It seems like a lot, and it seems like there's not a boundary there, but it is really something that benefits your students and it will benefit you, because what I noticed when I started doing that is that I wasn't sitting down once a day or once every 2 days answering these long emails. I was able to answer them more quickly and also kind of ward off problems. So if I had two students ask the same question, I could send out a course email, and that actually saved me less time checking email. And also the behaviors that you display as an instructor. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I do in my class to let my students know that, one, I am there and I am not just this floating head that may throw this video in at them. Um, that I am invested in their learning experience and I'm invested in them as a person and as a student, and as someone who is working to get their master's degree. So the next type of presence we need to talk about is teaching presence. And think about that as what happens before the class goes live. So that's going to be your course design. It's going to be how you really facilitate discussion and discourse within your course. And it's going to be how you directly instruct them. So that could be through a lecture video you record before. It could be the course layout or the template that you use. And it could be the different ways that you have set up in the course to discuss with your students. So when you think about that, I don't really want you to think about the discussion board that we normally see or flip or a true discussion, but think about that as ways that you're giving your students the option for feedback. So do you have a draft assignment? Do you have something that is going to be a low stakes in terms of grade assignment or activity for them that is really beneficial in helping them meet those course objectives? So that's what we mean by teaching presence. All right, so what are the benefits of increasing these different types of presence? So we all know that presence will benefit our students, but how does it do it? So the first way is engagement. So when you increase your engagement or when you increase your presence in your online course, you're going to increase engagement and you're actually going to increase student achievement within that course because they're going to know that you're invested. And when students know that you care, I truly believe that that makes all of the difference in their time investment within the course, which is going to turn around and increase their success within your course and within the program as a whole. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to increase community. So we don't want our students to be just kind of out there alone. And I think we all learned in COVID, even those of us that have been doing this for a long time, that was a very isolating experience. You go from being around people, maybe in an office situation, you go from being able to have these short little conversations with your colleagues or with your students when you are leaving class or when you are coming back to class, those little informal things that happen. And all of a sudden that was taken away from us in March of 2020. And so doing some little things within your course can almost facilitate that in the online space. Again, it goes back to the statement I made earlier that we can do it, we just have to do it differently. And so being purposeful about how you do that is really going to help your students build community and make them feel as a unit and not just out in this cyberspace area where the instructor is just a facilitator. They're just there to grade their papers. It's going to help them feel more connected to their classmates. And in some cases, it can actually help them get jobs when they're done. And to me, the most important one, and that's why I kind of went out of order, I put trust at the top because as an instructor and as someone who worked with thousands of online courses and saw kind of what happened when an instructor didn't respond to an email, and I'm not talking about just once a day, like I have had to reach out to department heads and instructors because students had gone weeks without any grading or any communication from their instructors. And what you don't want is you don't want them not to trust you. And you want them to feel less stress and overwhelmed because a lot of them, even now, post COVID, this may be their first online education experience. A lot of them are coming back to college with the access that online education is giving students. And this can be really overwhelming for them. And it can be scary. And again, it can be isolating. And when you increase the presence through your course design and through how you as an instructor or how you as an instructional designer train your instructors, it can really help just them feel more trusting of you. There's some really great research coming out of the University of Alabama from Dr. Laura McNeil. She just actually posted the study. She did a qualitative study with 15 graduate students within the University of Alabama's online instructional technology and design degree. And I think some of the things that her students said, honestly, it was kind of heartbreaking to hear them talk about how the lack of instructor presence made them feel. And as someone who is the quintessential and almost stereotypical teacher who is really there for them, that is just really sad. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're not included. And when you have an instructor that just pops in here and just throws some articles online and gives them a multiple choice quiz and never communicates with them, they don't trust you. And honestly, in most cases, they don't want to come back. So building that trust and community can help retain students within your courses and in your programs.
Hey, Hannah, it's interesting you said that because as you were saying that, Sue had written in the chat that it increased retention because students from previous terms want, yeah, when they find somebody they love, they want to come back. And just if people are not following along in the chat, I also want to mention Ronnie. Ronnie put in the chat about Aspire EDU's instructor insight. About setting those expectations and rules about instructors when they're not being engaged and things like that. So maybe at the end when we have our Q&A, we can talk a little more about some of these things. That'd be awesome.
Sure.
Thanks.
So next, I'm going to kind of move into the specific ways that I do these things in the courses that I do. So again, I don't want you to feel like this is the only way you can do it and this is the best way you can do it. This is just what works for us at the University of North Alabama. And I also want to throw out there that I did not create any of this. All of the things that I'm going to talk to you about, I either learned through professional development, through Quality Matters. So if you're a Quality Matters school, a lot of the teaching examples I'm going to give you, that's probably old news and you're probably already doing that. But as far as the instructor present, it's just some things that I've picked up along the way that is really low stakes for me, but very high stakes for students. So we're going to kind of dive into the teaching aspect of presence first, which is going to be what you build into your course really before it starts. So the first thing I'm going to show you is an instructor welcome. And this is my instructor welcome from a course that I taught in the fall. And one, I want them to see me and I want them to know about my life. I let them in just a little bit on my academic side here, but really I want them to know that like I am also a human, that I have a 7-year-old. I love weather. And if Catherine decides to speak, she might have a joke or two about that. We both lived in Tuscaloosa when the tornado came through in 2011. Um, and so I'm also a big sports fan. I am a booster and have season tickets to the University of Alabama gymnastics team. And so I want that to come out of them. I want them to know that I am more than instructional technology and design. And this is what we do. That picture's at the beach. It's not a really great screenshot of the picture that is in my course, but um, and so I also, in this last statement, this last I guess, kind of paragraph. That's in my course in 3 different places, because that is the expectations that I want my students to hold me to. Um, and so at our institution, we are required to use the 48-hour rule, but I send out an announcement and let them know that that is the absolute maximum. And I am checking emails at least twice a day, if not. I mean, we use Canvas at the University of North Alabama, and I have the app on my phone. So it's just like a notification. So most of the time I will pick it up and answer it within 5 or 10 minutes. Because again, if they are working and they have a question and they may only have 2 hours to work, I don't want them to have to wait 48 hours. Again, that doesn't work for everyone, but um, I also let them know that they'll get feedback within 3 days of the assignment due date. I know that may sound a little short and labor intensive, and it is, but our master's program is on 8-week semesters. So we're on like the 8-week timeline. And so if I don't give them feedback within that 3 days, they most of the time can't move on. And so I normally don't teach more than 1 or 2 classes in an 8 weeks. So I do my best to kind of stagger the due dates for the classes that I am taking. So they're not competing with each other for my time and my feedback. Um, and then I also let them know what I expect from them from the discussion post and let them know what the late penalty is. And again, all of this is in the syllabus. Um, but and I also have office hours that I don't really list there. That's on the homepage of the course. But your welcome can come in a variety of different formats. Some people choose to do a welcome video, someone do just a page within the LMS like this. What I typically do is this is my more formal meet the professor tab, if you will. And then what I do in my, I guess, introduction course is we use Canvas Studio to do a video introduction. And so I will come on and that is where my video welcome goes. In some of my, I guess, courses that are later on in our program where they have been introduction to death with almost the same people over the last 7 or 8 classes, we'll play a game. I really like Two Truths and a Lie. And so we kind of get some interactivity there because they already know each other. They already know that they're a teacher at Hartselle High School or they work somewhere in Birmingham, Alabama. That gets for me as a teacher, I get tired of reading them. And so we'll play a game. Two Truths and a Lie is my favorite because the students really get into that, especially when they know just enough about their classmates. It's really fun to see their guesses, and then when their response, they have to give one guess, and then one of their responses is actually revealing their lie. And the students just absolutely love that. So my instructor welcome changes depending on the course and really who my audience is. But this is from the first course that they take in our program. All right, so the next one is module overviews. And I think this is really important because we need to set expectations for students, and we also need to make sure that we have a template and they know what's expected. So none of our learning modules are the same, but they are all in the same template. So you will always have a purpose and you will always have learning objectives. And what you don't see here because the picture was too small and you couldn't read it is you will always have your learning activities next. and your resources. And so that kind of moves them through the content. And that looks different because we don't use the same content or the same amount of content for each module. But here you'll see they know why they are learning this. They also see my face again in this video that has been recorded. And this video is kind of like a hybrid overview and lecture video. It's a little longer than some of my normal overviews would be, and I kind of go into the different models that they're about to kind of get into. And then we have the learning objectives, and I cannot stress how important your learning objectives are. And you will also see some little teeny numbers in there. If you're a QM school, that's the alignment that is linking our module objectives back to our course objectives. And, students know why they're learning it and how they're going to learn it and how they're going to be expected to show that they have mastered those learning objectives. And all of that can be built in prior to the course going live. The next is a course schedule and assignment. And I toyed with putting this in here because this has always been a part of online learning for me, even in some of the worst courses that I have been in as a student. But I realized that this is not necessarily standard. And so what you're seeing here, we use simple syllabus at UNA, and it automatically pulls from our grade book. So this may look different. So we embed it into the course syllabus, and then anytime a date changes or a point changes or it changes, it automatically updates for us. So this is not really any extra work that I have to do, but I think it's really important. And so here students, this is kind of like the blueprint of everything that's going to be due. So they can go to one place and they can write down in their calendar or put them in their electronic calendar, whatever works. We also have a calendar function that will sync. And I think most LMS these days have that. But so students can see what is due and when it is due. And they can actually click on those links. And if they're logged into the course, it will take them back to the introduction discussion, or it'll take them back to the communities of practice and collaboration. It'll take them back there. So if they need more information about that specific assignment, it's like a one-stop shop. And that's really important to build trust because students know that I have put everything in one place, that they're not having to go through the grade book and click on each little thing or go through each module and click on those. And it also helps them know how I work as a professor, again, building up that trust aspect of why this is important. All right, the next one is rubrics. And I'll be honest, I don't grade anything without a rubric, even stuff that is only 1 point. And one, because it goes back to that consistency aspect that we were talking about. And two, it helps me be, I guess, consistent on my grading aspect because I always know the criteria that I'm grading them against. This assignment is worth 10 points, and it's not left up to me who gets 7.5 and who gets 8.5 for the same caliber. Everybody is kind of held to the same standard. And so it also helps students when they go to create this assignment because you're giving them additional information and they also have an expectation of how they're going to be graded. I'm a morning person. I tend to get up between 4 and 4:30 by choice because that's just when I function the best. But I'll be honest, I may function the best then, but until that caffeine kicks in, I may not be firing all cylinders. And so if I'm grading stuff at 4:30 in the morning, this helps me stay consistent in grading, and it also helps students. So all of our rubrics are built into Canvas in the exact same way. They're all used for grading. And so that is one aspect of feedback that they get. So not only do they get the rubric feedback, they're going to get written feedback, and that's a little later on in the presentation. All right, so now we're going to kind of move into the instructor presence aspect of this presence conversation. And the biggest thing that I think that has helped my students is this I have a question discussion board. This is in all of my courses, and I check this every time I log into the course. If I check an email from a student, I check this board. And so This can be a really great place for students to ask really low stakes questions. Maybe they're working ahead and they feel like they're going to bother me if they send me an email or hop into office hours, which is one of the biggest things that drives me crazy as a professor, is that they think that they're bothering me if they come into the office hours that I set up for them. This hour is yours. Please use it. Like, I am bored if I'm sitting here staring at a screen for an hour. So I always encourage them to come, even if it's just to come by and say, hey. And again, it gives them another, my teacher's a human kind of experience. But this is a really good way for people to clarify. And I also use this when I'm going back and updating my course for the next time it's offered. If someone had a question and needed clarity on how many times they were supposed to respond to the discussion board or those due dates, I'll use that as feedback to help me inform my design practice for the next time it's offered. So this is mutually beneficial. All the students can see this. It's like a normal discussion board. And so we really put emphasis on this if they want to use it. Now, I have some people who don't want to use it because they don't want their classmates or peers to think less of them. And so that's some of the things we also have to work through, especially in the first course that they take in our program. But so this is a really easy way to create access to yourself that also is not really, I guess, open access. You don't have to, you just go in and check it, and it makes you feel approachable and accessible. And as long as you go in and respond to it in a timely manner, that's also very important about this. But students really, really love this. All right, the next is announcements. And I feel like I get lots of pushback for this because I often get the argument that they are master students and they should be able to keep up with the calendar. Yes, that is valid. But also with your master's students, they're also juggling probably children and a full-time job and a significant other and life in general. And so if I can do one thing to help them stay on track, it is send this out every week. They know they normally get it before 7 a.m. on Monday. And really, we have some people in our department that pre-schedule these. So when they're setting their course up, they'll go in and schedule the announcement with the due date and then just go back and edit if they need to. I don't necessarily like to do it that way because I gave a shout out to a student, so I couldn't use the one I wanted to because her name was in my little blurb at the top. But I use this to also communicate updates with them. If I have fallen behind on grading, or if, say, I'm presenting at a conference in a couple weeks, I will tell them that, I may be delayed in responding to your email. So I use that first, just where it says, good morning, welcome to the first full week of ITG 642. That is where I give them short little announcements that may not warrant another email, but I still want them to know. And so I do not pre-program these. I do them every Monday morning. And so it lives in the course. They get what we call a friendly reminder every Monday, and it really helps them stay on track. And so I remind them of my office hours. I remind them of the student opinion surveys that go out. Um, you know, for my graduating students, I will put the graduation deadline in here also. It's like it's a one-stop shop, and my students love this. And so I would encourage you that just because they can doesn't mean that this isn't something really easy that you could go in and kind of add for your students. So of all the things I'm going to show you today, this one seems to always be the most controversial because we should expect them to keep up with the schedule. And I do expect them to keep up with the schedule, but I look at this like I would if I had graduate students in a class, say Tuesday and Thursday, and they had an assignment due on Thursday. What would I tell them as they were walking out the door? Have a great week. Don't forget your paper is due on Thursday. That's kind of just some of those organic small conversations. And this is one way that you can recreate that without sending 6 different emails or 3 different emails for each assignment each week. All right. The next one, and this is listed under announcements, but most of the time I send this as an email. But most of your learning management systems will have a button that you can message students within the grade book if they haven't turned something in. So what you see here is a clip of just the little reminder. So not only do they get that announcement on Monday, but I go in and in Canvas, you can click the three little dots and message students who, and it's not going to be the same in every LMS that you use, but it will it will only send this email to the people who haven't turned it in. So they get a second reminder from me about their assignment. And what this does is if you have someone who, has a sick child, or if they had something come up, or maybe they missed the Monday announcement and they have just fallen off of this wagon, this gives them a way to respond back just to me and not comment back on that assignment and be like, I'm struggling. Um, can you help? Can I have an extension? And so I typically don't take off that late penalty. And this is in the syllabus if they contact me before. And so this is a way that they can do that. It gives them almost an instant outlet to do that through the Canvas inbox. So I also like to do this. Again, I have it listed as an announcement. It's technically an email, but I said there were going to be 7 ways, and this would have made 8. So I kept it, I kept it at 7. And so the next thing is going to be feedback. And so before I show you the types of feedback that I do for my students, I really want to talk about the importance of it. So it needs to be frequent, immediate, supportive, and individualized. And what I want you to understand about individualized is that does not mean you have to retype the same thing over and over again. I have a Word document for each one of my courses, and I keep some template feedback that I notice that students always mess up on, even when I go back and I try to account for that the next time the course is offered. So don't think you have to write this book, I guess, to each student, but it is okay to have some templates as long as you individualize it. So one thing that I struggled with creating this conversation, I can't actually show you the comments that I leave because I use their name all the way through it. And I think that is so important. Say their name, make them feel like they are also a human. Like we're doing all of these things to make sure they know we are human, but we as professors and instructional designers need to create ways that they also know that we know that they're human. Um, and so I always use almost the PCP model. Like you did a great job on this, but next time, if you would like to get full credit, maybe do this, but also continue to do this because this is a great job. And so students really enjoy that because I'm not just taking off points and telling them only what they did wrong. Because very rarely do I have students who didn't do anything that was positive. Actually, I would probably say never. I can always find a positive for them. And even with my students who are lower performers and maybe who have gotten into some of our courses and realized that maybe instructional technology and design is not for them, I can still find a positive. And it still makes them feel like they are not just a complete failure. So just wanted to talk about that first. But the next thing I do, and I call this my grades and final thoughts for an assignment. And this goes out for every assignment that I do. And so what I do is the last one I grade, I give them the class average and then the highest grade and the lowest grade. Now this does get tricky if you only have a couple students. So if I have one of my lower number classes, I guess, or my lower enrollment classes, then I'm a little more careful with how I word that first line. But I have 21 students in the class that this was from. So there's really no way that we're going to violate any kind of FERPA there. And the students really like knowing the highest and the lowest, and they really like knowing the class average. It makes them feel more human. And if they made that 17, then, and I don't know about y'all and y'all's programs, but our students that I interact with are perfectionists. And they will literally, like that 17 is not a bad grade. It's not the best you could do, but it's not a bad grade. And so you still pass the assignment. And they just, you know, I'm so like I get apology emails from my students. I am so sorry I messed up on that. I am so sorry I did this. And so this has kind of helped ward that off when they see that maybe they weren't the only one that scored a 17 or an 18 or a 19. And I also go through and I almost do the assignment for them. So this specific assignment, they were given 3 different scenarios and they had to talk about the different data collection methods they would use. There is no right or wrong answer here with this assignment. And so I think it's important that they hear from me and my thoughts about them. And so this is also a great place. I didn't have to do it here. Actually, yes, I did. So if points were deducted, it was mostly due to not providing 3 methods per scenario. That was in the rubric, but some of them only did 2. So this is a great place for me to give blanket feedback. If we are all not doing well with our APA citations, or maybe we're not doing it at all, or maybe it's a discussion and they are just saying, I agree, and summarizing the post. This is a really good way for me to give blanket feedback to everyone. And so the students love this because they know that I am there with them and they know that I am an expert in this area because I can also answer this. So this also helps build trust with your students. So this can be pretty labor intensive the first time that you do it. But again, if you're not heavily changing your assignments every semester, you can reuse some of this. Like my scenarios don't change most of the time. So my answers there really aren't going to change unless I introduce a new resource that maybe emphasizes a new data collection method. So again, it is individualized to the specific course, but we have kind of saved work the second and third time and so on that you take because you've already done it.
Hannah, I'm going to pop in for 1 second. You've had
Yeah.
lots of discussion going on in the background,
Oh,
people
good.
submitting their ideas and their tips and things. But Sue was asking specifically about this item, about where do you post the blanket feedback? Is it in an announcement?
Okay, so this feedback is actually sent out through an email. And I try to save my announcements just for either really important things because I don't want them to have to dig for those friendly reminders. And so I want them to be able to just click and reference it. And so this goes out as an email, but within the LMS. I don't send out an email directly to their campus email. This lives within campus, and so that is where the students, I used to do it in an email or in an announcement, and a lot of the student opinion of instruction feedback that I got was like, there's just too many announcements going out. And so I separated these two, and that is really what it was too much trying to do the grades and final thoughts, and because they were having to kind of dig through them. So yeah.
And I suspect some others probably agree with that based on earlier comments. Somebody mentioned back talking about asking questions and things, like the option of having them post anonymously their dumb questions. I'm putting that in the scary quotes.
Yeah.
That, personally, I like the fact that you have some public feedback mechanisms and you're also referring to some more private feedback mechanisms. And so I just wanted to point that out, that people were kind of noticing that and asking about that earlier as well.
Yeah. So the summary of today is just we've talked about 7 different ways that we can increase presence within your course. But really, we want to increase retention, engagement, trust, and community. And if you are an instructional designer, you can help with this when you build the courses. But you can also think of some ways that maybe discipline specific that you can help your instructors do once the course leaves you as an instructional designer. And from an instructor an instructor perspective, just communicate with them and know that they are human and, care about them. And that's really the basis of being an online instructor. I mean, occasionally I get a question when I talk about this to different groups is, well, how do you handle the emotional investment from the instructor perspective? Is that not exhausting? And my answer to that is, well, yes. I mean, I think education as a whole is exhausting, no matter what branch of education, whether you design, whether you teach, whether you do both, whether you support. I have done all of those things, and it has all been exhausting in a different way. But it's a trade-off because the exhaustion when you teach face to face is that you're having the lesson plan for every class, and you know, you're if you get off of that lesson plan because maybe a course discussion went a way that it shouldn't or a way that it wasn't planned to but needed to, that there's just different kinds of exhaustion. So we're just trading that out in the online space. Um, and so really care about them, let them know that you are a human and that you understand that they are a human. Um, and I think one of the things that I struggled to, I guess, understand and implement as a brand new professor was the late penalty and feeling that someone told me that not everybody can make A's in your class. And that means your class doesn't have enough rigor and maybe it needs to be harder. And so when I first started teaching, there was no leniency in that late policy because I teach master's students. Most of them are really high achievers, or you wouldn't come back for a graduate degree. And so I kind of use that late policy for that purpose. And that was the biggest mistake I think I made as a younger, because it took away the human aspect of students and of me, because I'm just the mean person who doesn't care that their child got sick and that they couldn't do it, or their child was in the hospital, or maybe they had a parent or a grandparent die. Um, anything and everything can and has go wrong with students, whether you're virtual or face to face. And so, yeah, just do whatever works for your discipline. Is Catherine still here? Catherine, can I put you on the spot? Are you where you can talk?
Yes, to all.
Hi. Um, can you talk so I picked Catherine out because when we worked together in some capacity for over 15 years. And two, she has look, she's in Magnolia Springs. Um, and so she also right now teaches like a partial differential equations class and has to give feedback on math, which I think it would be really interesting, like how you how do you do that? Because that's not really a space that I live in because I can give more qualitative feedback. So,
So we do some of the things that you talked about. First of all, for differential equations, I'm a lawyer and a librarian and an instructional designer, and all I can say is hmm. And so I spend a lot of time going back and forth with the 85-year-old colleague who is the mathematician in the class. But something that has worked really well for us once I got Professor Jones to do it was office hours. And we have office hours every weekend before an assignment is due or before a test. And we do it usually on Sunday afternoon at 1. We're going to do it tomorrow afternoon at 1 instead because of Easter. But the University of Alabama markets these online classes as working with your life. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to make it work with their lives. And it has worked out great. We don't always get a ton of people. We always get some. I record the office hours and share it with the people who aren't able to come. And our SOIs are great. That Professor Jones is on the Honors Day list again for outstanding student opinion of instruction. So does that help? And always, I'm so proud of you, Hannah, always the multiple checking the emails times a day. And if Professor Jones doesn't get back to it that day, I'll reach out to him, because we've got deployed students and all kinds of issues with these guys. And we said we would make it work for them. And we really, really try to do that. Also, I follow a lot of the tips that you gave. This was great.
Thanks. All right. Well, that's all. Thank you for letting me put you on the spot, Catherine. She's always willing to go along with my crazy ideas. But that's all that I have for you. So we can open it up to questions. Feel free to be on camera, not be on camera, put it in the chat box.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have you have a question that came in a moment ago. And I think it's probably to the group as well, not to put you on the spot, because it's a tough one. Laura was asking about how do you help faculty recognize that online is not an easier way to teach. So, if anybody wants to share discussions they've had about that it's not easier. I think Catherine gave a good example just now of how she had to kind of sounds like wrangle the math professor, but
So I'll be honest here, Laura, in that it has always been kind of built in with the institutions that I have worked at, because it's only been two, the University of Alabama, the University of North Alabama, and both of them are heavily involved with quality matters. And you really can't let a course go, neither institution lets a course go live without meeting some kind of criteria. It may not be the 85% QM criteria, but it's going through some kind of quality check before it is launched. And so I think based on that kind of weeds out the easier way. Now, that doesn't keep instructors from doing that or having maybe taking over a course for part of their course load that's online and thinking that it's not, because you also have to consider that post-COVID, those RSI federal mandates to keep your funding, where you have to prove, I'm sorry, I used an acronym there. Does everybody know RSI? Like regular and substantive interaction. And so all of our institutions now, if they are federally funded, are having to prove certain standards. So it also is making it a little harder to just get by with throwing things up. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer there. So maybe someone else in the room does.
it's a fine answer. There's no such thing as a right or wrong answer to this. And you're in a friendly audience. They would not say it's a. People said that. Laura said that helped. See, um, as I said earlier, we had a few people mentioning some tools that they were using as you were talking about different things. So I do encourage people to go back through. If I miss one, I apologize. I'm just kind of scrolling to remember. Yeah, Sue was talking about the Canvas doc viewer as a way of annotating. Someone else was using a Chrome extension called Annotate Pro, which is an extension for your browser that allows you to quickly add comments. So you can go, they provided the link to that. You can scroll back up in the comments in the chat for that. I would just say we had an interesting discussion. I was at a conference a couple of days ago, and we had an interesting discussion about some of these tools and being very careful about what those extensions were doing with the content, since that is student content, and being careful about what we feed to the AI machine, shall we say. So just a little side note there to be careful about that. Somebody else told me another tool. I was going to list it, and then I said, you know what? I haven't fully vetted it enough. I don't want to put it on the list. I know at the beginning, I'm going to put her on the spot because she's on camera. So she's already put herself on the spot. Ronnie mentioned about the Aspire Instructor Insight. Did you want to share any other, and for those who have not heard of that, do you want to give a little pitch for it?
I get accused of working for Aspire EDU. I do not. It's just that it was, we worked with our institutional data people for years to try to get them to use the very dirty data that's from the Canvas LMS to answer these questions. And then I posted something in the Canvas community about, is anybody else doing this more efficiently? Somebody turned me on to Aspire EDU, and by like the end of the week, we had licensed it. So we set up our rules and they reflect our policies for online teaching behaviors. And every day, every morning I wake up with the report, and we taught all of our program directors how to use it. And there's no more surprises like, hey, my online teacher hasn't been around for 2 weeks. Because you're not allowed to miss 3 days in a row of logging in. That's one of our main rules. There's other policies that we look at for like the time we expect them to grade a graded assignment for like the turnaround. And it goes so granular that you can see an individual teacher's comments on a graded assignment from the dashboard of Instructor Insight by Aspire EDU. It also comes with Dropout Detective, which is the other side of the house, and that's like a retention piece for student behaviors. So
Nice. Thanks.
it's wonderful.
Excellent
It's so
info,
much money.
Marshall. Excellent info, Marshall. See, I knew you could pitch it. I knew you could pitch it effectively and quickly. I'm just scrolling through to see if anybody else had. Let's
Hi.
see. Yes, there we
Yes.
go.
So yeah, I have a comment and a question. My comment is I think there's a difference between online instruction and online teaching. I actually teach online. We meet once a week, just like you would if you went to a classroom, except it's virtual. And so I have a once a week scheduled class with my students. And it is, what's often referred to as a synchronous class. There is asynchronous where the students are instructed online, and this class is about having instructor presence to make sure that you don't just disappear for the whole semester or whatever. So I'm getting that the discussion today is about online instruction, where the students are basically taking an online instruction class, but the instructor doesn't have a regular scheduled class for actual instruction. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. So all of the programs that I currently teach in and have taught in have all been asynchronous.
Okay.
I think a lot of the things that we went over today could be applicable because do you use like a flipped learning model with your students? So do you have them, like, do you put up resources for them and then y'all discuss it?
Right, in my class.
Right. So, the course
class
template and I'm sorry, I think my internet is lagging. I'm not meaning to talk over you. But the course template is still just as important, I think, in that synchronous online model as it is as the asynchronous online model.
Yeah, I would agree with you. We use Canvas.
Okay.
I do have a Canvas structure that my students can log into. I have weekly quizzes. And so there's constant quizzes, and the building of the grade comes from those quizzes. So they can go and look at their grade book and, see, how they stand in the class. But I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't confusing what you're discussing with a synchronous model.
Right. No, everything that we talked about today was based on an asynchronous online model. So yeah.
But stay tuned because we do have some other speakers that'll piggyback on this and are going to focus probably more the other way, and are going to focus a lot more on the engagement in that live virtual training or virtual instructing sort of setting. So yeah, so we're trying to that's a great question. And I think also for those who, I know a few people was letting people in throughout. For those who came in late, this is recorded, obviously. If you go back to the beginning of Hannah's presentation, she also touched on some differences between even within the asynchronous instruction versus teaching, and things that get set up ahead of time versus as you're actively working through the course. So I encourage you to also go back and see that. So I think I stated that properly. Hannah's not yelling. She's not shaking her head no at me. So I'm gonna take that as I summarized well on that. Well, I just want to take a moment, first of all, to thank you, Hannah, for being here. Thank all of you that made it here live today. And I'm going to thank my future viewers because, as we said, this is recorded. And I know some of you and many others will go back and watch the recording. In a moment, I am going to end the recording, but I'm not kicking you out of the room. So if you have other questions or you just want to stay and hang and network with me for a minute or ask questions about USDLA stuff or anything, feel free to do that. So don't, when I stop recording, it's not an automatic, kick you out the door, get off my lawn kind of situation. Just want to say that. But again, thank you all for being here today. Thank you again, Hannah. As I mentioned at the beginning, Hannah will also be one of the virtual presenters at the USDLA conference. We're doing a very different structure than other conferences you've been to. It's more of a learning journey. So there'll be some free on-site events that are virtual that you'll get to participate in. And then hopefully some of you will make it on-site with us in St. Louis. And then after the conference, we're going to do some more virtual things to bookend and tie some things together and let people, reflect. Somebody mentioned earlier and the importance of reflecting and taking all the things, because I'm a big proponent that I hate when people just go to conferences and they have a great time and then we go back to real life and we don't actually take those committed actions to move on to the next thing. So that's why one of the reasons we've structured things a little differently this year than in the past. So with that, I am going to stop the recording, but thank you all very much again. Please come back and visit us again. Stay tuned in the newsletters and the website for upcoming webinars. I'm putting some new ones up this weekend, probably. We're going to be talking about telehealth in libraries. We have one of my friends, UVA, is going to come in. She's going to talk about the workbook and how they did some great work in that space. We're going to talk about social emotional learning and emotional I'm not wording well all of a sudden. We're going to be talking about, everybody talks about the sort of the tech side of AI and the prompts and the whatever, but we have somebody coming in that's going to talk about the emotional intelligence. That's the word I was looking for. Emotional intelligence as related to the use of AI. And as some of you mentioned, the importance of wellness and mental health discussions that are more prevalent, thankfully, these days. We've also got people coming in again to talk more about just practices with instructional design and instructor presenting and all of those things. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you again at a future webinar.